Hi, this is episode 4 of the Compliance Coach. Thank you for joining. And in this episode, we will talk about one of my favorite topics, the human touch in compliance. And in most particular, in terms of why is compliance culture so important in the era of digital transformation. In the words of Simon Sinek, a culture is strong when people work for each other and with each other. We will see whether this is the truth as well in digital transformation. So 3 topics that we will touch upon. What is compliance culture? 2, why it's so important, in particular in the era of digital transformation. And 3, why do these programs so often fail? My name is Ralf Ebert, 20 years of experience in senior executive roles in compliance. I will talk about my personal view, facts and insights so that you can learn from experts, but for experts and beginners, thinking and impacting compliance differently. Hey, let's talk about the facts in digital transformations in the bank. And pursuant to a recent study, it is roughly 75% of financial organizations who have started the journey in the digital transformation. So what are the reasons for it? I have found out 5 major reasons. Number 1 is the customer experience. Customers want to have a seamless experience with banks from the onboarding until the ongoing, served in the best ways. And we saw the arrival of so-called neobanks, which are completely digitalized and have changed really the world of banking sector. So that's number 1 in terms of offering a new experience to clients. Number 2 is that banks have understood that they can't do it on their own. So they have shifted towards a collaboration model with fintechs and regtechs, which help them to provide solutions, and therefore most of these projects are much more efficient and from a cost perspective as well, something to take into consideration. Number 3 is cybersecurity. That's an element regarding as well data protection. So it is more and more important to have a digital control over the data which sits within the bank, as well as how to manage the data coming from the client. So cybercrime, you have seen that. Certainly one of my last elements is number 5 or 6 in Top Trends 24. If you didn't see that episode, have a look inside of that. Number 4 is AI and automation. I have done a complete episode 3 on this element. So that, of course, is something that has impacted the whole financial sector, in particular compliance, in terms of getting more sophisticated tools to proceed, identify threats and risks. Automation, we have already seen roughly 5 years ago, where a lot of processes have been now automated in the sense that the compliance officer is only acting as a compliance validator. But that is already something which is clear for us that will continue. Number 5 is blockchain experiences. And here as well, we see solutions outside the banking world, but as well within the banking world. Give you an example. For instance, in Switzerland, we have for an onboarding of so-called external asset managers, a fully fledged blockchain solution, which permits the onboarding A to Z on the blockchain in real time with all the security features that you need to know. So these are mainly the 5 reasons why digital transformation is already a fact. So let's now talk about compliance culture. I have looked it up and I found a very interesting definition to this one. I read it out loud. Compliance culture refers to an organizational environment and set of values that prioritize adherence to law, regulations, and ethical standards governing the financial sector. Did you understand anything? Me neither, because for me, when we talk about culture, one element is missing. So about the social culture. And the social culture talks about of how we behave, how we think, how we feel about things here, and how do we do things around here, meaning what are our common values. And that, I think, is really the most important part if we define compliance culture within a bank. That needs to be set out by values. And these values you can express in a lot of elements on your compliance level, which is already a first step. So what I did, for instance, is writing a vision and mission statement for the compliance team of how do we do our things here. And I think that's already important. And whenever that can be related to a risk appetite statement of the bank and what we do and what we don't do, then you're already one step ahead. And the most common factor to this is really the word trust. Yeah, and that is really funny, especially in digital transformation. If you talk with people all over it, trust is a word that comes up every time, and trust is a part as well of the cultural elements. When you're defining values, you have to trust that these values are applied and that you're measured against them. Now, let's have a look in terms of why then compliance culture is so important for the digital transformation project. Now, here I think there are three main reasons that we need to talk about that. Number one is transformation processes are not made just for organizations. They are made for people that are working with these tools, with these enhancements. So that's number one, the human factor, the human behavior, what you would like to have and what you would like to change. So that I think it's really important of how the mindset is built within the bank. The second one is that in particular with these kind of transformation programs, there is always a high dependency on compliance, meaning is my data protection program working? Are all the risks are covered? Am I in a situation where I might be subject to a reputation risk? Can I trust the service providers in enrolling the kind of whole program is going in the cloud in line with the regulatory and environment, and so on and so on. So by default, compliance will be involved in that element. And so compliance culture and having established that is really important. And the last one is, of course, that very often, and I think it's one of the biggest misbelief that exists, people think that whenever you come to an automation or digital transformation, you can cure the lack of the organization. Meaning, if you have processes, people, or the compliance functioning of the organization, if that's not working, digital transformation will not replace it. I think that's the most important thing to take out of this short session. You need compliance culture as a foundation, as an underlying foundation to build upon the digital transformation project, and not vice versa, and certainly not to replace it. So that's for the compliance culture. There is a myth in the bank that compliance only belongs to the compliance department. And I think that is one of the biggest errors that we have come across, because compliance is a responsibility and accountability for the whole bank. It would be the same, sorry if I go in one of my favorite topics, soccer, if you would say the goalkeeper is the only one who's playing defense. Yeah. So that I think it's important that all people, all players in the game, as Simon Sinek would say, all players in the game have their role to fulfill, and they have a role when it goes to the attack, and they have a role when it comes to the defense, and that doesn't sit alone with compliance only. So to make your digital transformation project successful, you need to have, first of all, in place a working compliance culture, with a clear vision and mission, with a clear value model that is not only expressed on the level of compliance, but throughout the whole bank. That's number one. Number two is that all stakeholders need to be involved from the beginning in these kind of projects, with a clear definition of what is in there, where we go. And honestly, it is, in the word of Simon Sinek, an infinite game, the digital transformation era. Why? Because there is not one end solution. It is always getting to the next level. And I think what we need always to be prepared is where we want to go with the next step. What are the elements to be achieved? And already at that level, think of what is the next step in front of us. And if you do so, then I think you have a really storyline to tell. You have a great possibility to have a success story to tell in this element. But it needs trust, and it needs the right choice of people that are working for you and that are working with you. So thank you again. That was another episode of the Compliance Coach. Thank you for your valuable time that you are here. Please ask any kind of question or comments. Don't forget to subscribe. Have a look in my other videos that are dealing as well with AI, digital transformation and other elements. And looking forward to see you soon on this channel, thinking and impacting compliance differently.